before I start this video, I just want to quickly mention that there are trigger warnings in this video. I talk about mental health, I talk about grief, death, suicidal thoughts and tendencies. If you are affected in any way, I do urge you to get help, and I do urge you to please only watch this video if you're absolutely comfortable with those themes. I don't think there's anything too horrific, but I'm very frank when I talk about these things, and these are things that have affected my life, and I know that they affect some of my friends, and I don't want anybody to watch this video going in thinking that it's a light and airy topic. Please only do so if you are absolutely in a good place. If you are affected by anything, I'm always here to chat. I will leave some links down below. If anybody wants to get hold of me ever, please reach out. Probably Instagram is best because that's the thing I check the most, but comments, I will leave my email address as well so that people who do not use social media are absolutely able to get hold of me. I won't leave my phone number. Obviously, please bear in mind that I am not a professional. I am not talking from a point of view of being able to help in any professional capacity, but if you need someone here to talk to, I'm absolutely always available for that. If you know me, then please do reach out via text, via email, via any method. I'm obviously available on WhatsApp. I tend to check my messages quite regularly, so please do contact me if you need to, and I will leave some appropriate links in the description, as well as places where you can find help professionally if you need to, because it's really important. And now on to the video. Enjoy, have fun, bye. So if anybody's got a way of like tearing your hair back, ouch, tying your hair back so you get all the all of these bits, because I can find I can do it, but they tend to like just pop out, and if I can get them, I can't get the bits at the back of my head. They fall down. So somebody was like, oh, you need to go a bit higher, but if I go too high, then I still don't quite get these bits. But yeah, I don't know, is that always like a bit that people can't get? Plus, if I show you, if I can even do this, like it's hang on, I need to take my glasses off so I can grab at the hair that I don't have. Right. Cool. Oh, actually got it, but I always miss like little straggly bits. Is that cool? Does that look good? Is that better? Cool. Just pop my glasses back on. Whew. Okay. And so today I wanted to talk about coronavirus, because while it's not something that I want to do all the time on this channel, it's something that I really want to talk about. It's important to me that I document everything that's going on in my life as it goes on, because I just need to. So I thought I'd talk about my mental health experience during 2020 and the start of 2021. So as you're probably all aware, coronavirus has been with us for almost a year now. I mean, it's been over a year since it was discovered, but a year since it's been making a pretty global impact. So yeah, back in January 2020, things were proceeding pretty much as normal. I think in about January, February, we'd heard about this thing called COVID-19, which is caused by a coronavirus that went from an animal to a human. There's a lot of speculation as to how and when and why that happened. But for the purposes of science, it presumably went from a market where somebody had eaten something and it travelled from that animal that was potentially contaminated to the human, and obviously at that point this virus was then like, oh, I've made the leap. So it was fairly unknown until that point. But in about February, I think I had a meal with my extended family. Everyone was there, everything was quite normal. I can't even remember what event it was for, but we all maybe it was just before March, just before like the beginning of March, because that would have been about Mother's Day, I think. And essentially we all went out for a meal and the subject came up and we were all like, you know, I was a little bit worried because I'm always a little bit worried about this kind of thing. But we've obviously had pandemics and epidemics before, like bird flu, like swine flu, and I think we all just thought, you know, it'll be over, it won't come to much. Nothing's ever really come to much. Ebola I was quite scared of as well, because obviously that's particularly nasty and particularly, but I think the difference with this is it's even more highly transmittable than we'd first given it credit for, and it just kind of spread like wildfire from that point onwards. And March of 2020 completely changed my life. I think it completely changed everybody's lives, and suddenly everything that we felt that was quite normal and quite like, you know, things that we'd be able to do, we had completely taken for granted, because all of a sudden you couldn't meet up with people, you couldn't go out for anything other than select exemptions, so to go out and go food shopping and to go out food shopping, to go out and do just random things. And I don't talk about where I work very often because I don't where I work has obviously a social media policy, and I don't want to bring in where I do work, but let's just say I work with customers, and so I've been in contact with customers since this all began, and nothing's really changed for me job-wise. I haven't had to work from home for an extended period of time. I haven't been furloughed. Nothing about my job really has changed or been impacted all that much, which is a blessing, because it means that I'm obviously, unlike a lot of people who are either out of a job or their company's folded or they've gone under or they've had to be furloughed and work from home. And that must be really hard, because not only are you living on a smaller wage, you're also obviously, your work life has changed, or your kids are home from school, and again I don't have that problem, I don't have kids, it's just me and my partner, and that's just quite easy and quite normal, and nothing much has changed. But in March, I don't think I've ever experienced anxiety quite as hard as I did back then. So I was in tears in a number of circumstances, and I remember going into work and I just remember crying because I just couldn't see how much worse this could get. Like, this was sort of like living in a dystopian science fiction film, except it's real, and the things that you're doing are real, and the things that you're feeling are suddenly real, and they're suddenly there, and it just kind of came at me out of nowhere. Like, as soon as we'd gone into lockdown, I felt like it was the end, and at several points during this, I've really felt like the only way out for me was to take my own life, essentially. Fortunately, I've never gotten to the place, except once where I've ever felt in my life like I needed to do that. And that was very, very short-lived, and thankfully, like, I'm too scared of the concept of, like, first of all, I think I'm able quite quickly to snap back into, is this really a solution? Because you don't know what comes after death, obviously. So we don't know where we're going, but I do know what I'm leaving behind. So thankfully, it's never been something that has ever gotten past the stages of just fleeting thoughts, and I hope that never changes. I will, by the way, post links down below to organisations that you can contact if you're feeling like this, because I know that, you know, it's still going on, and for a lot of people they're still trying to process mental health, and I'm always trying to process mental health, I guess. But yeah, like I said, I would either be at home or I'd be at work, and I just burst into tears because I felt so hopeless and so helpless, like there was nothing I could really do. Quickly, I think, thank God that I had someone in my life who I was living with who has and is always there and is always supportive and will always hand on heart care about me and my mental health, and you know, it's something we can work through together. But I've never felt so desperate. And you know, I was scared of this virus because every day I was keeping myself reassured and reading the news, and you know, at that particular time every day there were just headlines that were harrowing, and that's something that I really had to learn how to deal with, because I've always struggled with the news and how the news reports things. Like, things always seem terrifying to me in the news, like whatever I'm reading, and last year was no exception. Like, there were so many things that went on that it just felt like I was living in an apocalyptic time where everything was just gonna go wrong, and I just couldn't deal with it. Luckily, I think with going back over my CBT and giving myself time and having a constant job and a constant routine really just helped to assuage my anxiety. I've dealt with anxiety for a long time. It's not something that's going anywhere, but I think I have a pretty good handle on it most of the time. Of course, there are things I want to work on. I'm not there by a long shot, but I think I can deal with most of the harrowing symptoms. I think the biggest thing out of March and onwards is, for a little while I was worried about the virus more so, and was worried more so about death than knowing that at some point you are going to die. That's like a mortal thing that happens. Nobody lives forever. Would you want to if you could? I certainly wouldn't. But at the same time, like, you know, death does scare me, and the fact that you never really know when your time is here is a horrible thought. And having known someone really close to me who did die at the age of just 19 makes me never want to take life for granted. Like, I feel like when I'm going to work or when I'm going about my business now, like, I see people who will stand in the middle of the road and have a chit chat, or will, you know, cross the road in front of cars, and you think, for crying out loud, your life is so precious and so important, and it's something you take for granted. You take for granted that you're just gonna be there the next moment, and sometimes you're not, and that's horrible, and that's a hard thing to have witnessed, and a hard thing to have witnessed somebody else go through. Just, yeah, yikes. Luckily, I don't know anybody who has died of COVID, but I obviously know of headlines where people my age, people younger than me, people much older than me generally have died of this. And I think for me it became quite apparent quite quickly that this wasn't just some kind of flu, this wasn't just something that would just go away. But I think I had hope that it wouldn't last until 2021, that it would disappear as quickly as it came, and that maybe it would just last a few months and just die down. Obviously that hasn't happened, and here in the UK and especially England, I think we're really suffering with an overcrowded population and a relatively small amount of land for all of us to inhabit, and so it just kind of makes the whole virus much more virulent. Also now having another strain of it to deal with it's just a terrifying situation. I think around about the summer I'd gotten to grips. I think the human mind is really wonderful in that it's so adaptive, and that we almost become desensitized to danger really quickly. It's probably a survival instinct that if we're constantly afraid of something or constantly living on the edge, we are spending way too much energy, and you know, if we do need to fight, we're not going to be able to, and we're not going to be able to sustain that. But by about the summertime, I'd stopped having trouble sleeping. I would wake up at 3 a.m. some days and feel like I couldn't breathe, feel like I had COVID symptoms because I was so worried. And I remember waking up and feeling like I needed a second pillow so I would be able to breathe. And at the same time, I hadn't been diagnosed for IBS, so I kept feeling this tightness in the chest, in my upper chest, that I now know is indigestion. But at the time I was really worried, and obviously being worried doesn't help IBS symptoms either, because your gut is extremely responsive. I can't remember which chemical it is, but there's a chemical a little bit like serotonin and those kind of things that you've actually got more of in your gut than you do in your head, and I didn't realise this. And obviously that is the chemical that you're releasing and that reacts to things when this happens. So it's really no coincidence that you get butterflies in your stomach, because that's where you're feeling in your intestine there's a huge amount of bacteria that live in there. And yeah, so IBS, anxiety, everything on top of each other was leading me to think that I couldn't breathe and that I would get it and that I was gonna die. I honestly have thought that in the past. I think, like I said, by about June, July, I've now kind of, I like to think of it as I kind of exist in a bubble. I obviously try and wash my hands where possible and where practical. Always at work I'll be pumping the hand sanitizer and just doing that whenever I can. And I just think that by the summertime I was I understand a little bit more now about what's going on, and I know what the death rate is, and I know what the infection rate's like, and I know that it's likely that we will get it at some point. It's a mixed bag, I guess, whether your immune system will just break into this overzealous, I need to get rid of this, and that's actually seems to be the most dangerous thing about it. But I'm hopeful that, the likelihood is I would survive. I may even be asymptomatic, which I know sounds awful, but I would hope that I would know that I've got it through some kind of asymptomatic test. And I would hope that if I did, that I would be asymptomatic, so I wouldn't feel ill. I would just stay at home for however long it takes and then go back to work and have not passed it on. That's obviously a very idealistic situation, and I don't know whether that's what would happen, but I have my fingers crossed that if I do get it, it is only like a cold or a little bit bad flu. I've had flu a couple of times. That was not fun. So like I said, all of my pinkies and all of my toes crossed. By about the summer, I was feeling ready to live again and ready to like, yeah, I really want to like see things and do things. And I think at that point I was getting kind of frustrated that we couldn't do things. I had an amazing, I must say, holiday in Cornwall, which is somewhere that I've never really been on holiday to. I think it's so close that I kind of was taking it for granted. And when I used to go on holiday with my parents, we used to go abroad most years. We used to go to really exotic and faraway places. So the idea of holidaying at home was something that I was like, you can't make the same memories at home. You can't do that in Cornwall. It's not going to be the same. It's not, 34 degrees. It's not Florida. But no, I had a really good time. We had a National Trust membership and have a National Trust membership still, and it was just lovely to go around places like Dunster Castle up in near Minehead, and then like go to Cornwall and go around like Trelisic and various other amazing places, take a walk. And it didn't feel normal by any stretch. Like, we still had, obviously, social distancing has been in since March. Mask wearing has been in a force, I believe, since about June-ish time. When we started to come back out of lockdown, it became apparent, I think, to a lot of people that we needed to be wearing face masks to support keeping the R number under control. And we had a pretty good summer. Like, I managed to do a lot of things with my friends. We played some Dungeons and Dragons. Some amazing stuff happened, and I will never forget that summer, because I think it's like this beacon of hope that's been, that even in a horrid, dark year, we still had a really lovely summer, and I still got to go on holiday, and I still got to enjoy some quality moments with my husband that I'm so grateful for now. I think at the time, if you'd have asked me, I'd have been like, well, I kind of want a bit more, but I now kind of accept the freedoms I do have, and the stuff I take for granted, I'm even more grateful for, because I'm like, we will obviously get to a point where I hope we'll be able to do these things. And so, yeah, I just have my fingers crossed about all of that, really. November kind of came along, and I think October, November, and the autumn started to come in, and cases started creeping up. And we've been in the UK, in England. It's very specific that I talk about England at this point, because England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland at some point have had different rules to each other. I live in the southwest of England, which I think up until about September, October, we were largely unaffected. There were places up in the north of the country that I know have been in lockdown-like conditions for a really long time, and my heart goes out to anybody who's living up in the north who has kind of been in. We have a tiered system, so we have gone from tier 1, which I think is moderate risk, to tier 2, which is high. Tier 3 is very high, and recently, because of the new strain, there's been tier 4, which is essentially lockdown conditions. Tier 3, the whole tier system went through a restructure after the last lockdown, which happened. But until sort of September, October, November, around then, I can't exactly remember which, we were kind of living our lives fairly unaffected in the southwest. Like, we could still mix and mingle and do those kind of things, and it wasn't really a problem. The second lockdown hit, and that was in November, and yeah, for me, I was frustrated at this point, because I felt like scientists had been badgering and saying, look, we need a lockdown, we need something. And, you know, countries around us were going into lockdown. Scotland were doing all that they could. Wales, I think, did a fire break. I think that's what they called it, circuit break. But they called it fire something. And essentially they went into lockdown where you couldn't even buy non-essential goods in a supermarket. So, you know, that half of the stores would be closed off, and it was literally only you could go out for very specific things, and that was it. And then I kind of looked at England, and we weren't doing anything differently than we had been. So a couple of weeks after that, it was announced that we were going into our own lockdown and would be in it for 4 weeks, at which point I believe it was said that it would automatically end, which of course it did, but I don't feel like, first of all, I feel like it was too late to do any good. I also think 4 weeks, come on, a lockdown that lasts 4 weeks isn't going to do an awful lot. It takes a couple of weeks to start seeing any reduction in any numbers generally, which means that the deaths obviously take a little bit longer, and your hospital admissions go down around about that time too. So it just means that by the time you've got a clear picture of what's happening, you can't let it go then, because you need to be on top of it. And I feel like our government really haven't been. They've been really slow at reacting, and we haven't really been banning travel. We haven't been saying to people, you know, you need a test before you come to the UK, which I think has taken me by surprise, that we just don't seem to be doing enough. And then all of a sudden, now that we're in a lockdown again, we're in our 3rd lockdown, this time I feel a lot more like, oh, okay, this is really serious again. I need to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to stop this transmitting. I have enough to do at home. Thank God I have vlogging again too, which is just really nice to do and really nice to talk to everyone who may want to listen. But what I do find is that actually it's really like, I'm just really frustrated that when we enter a lockdown, people are like, oh, we need to do more, we're not doing enough. And it's like, you're the people who actively make these rules. Like, you know, I do not sit at home and think, you know what, I think we should be sending people to school. Like, I've never thought at any point during this whole thing that we should be sending our kids to school, because I know that they like don't pick it up themselves, they don't get ill with it, but they spread it, and they are mingling all the time. And my heart goes out to any teacher who's had to deal with this and has been in that position for the last year or so. Like, I know our kids really need an education, but there must be other ways, other better ways of them getting an education than sending them to a building full of other people who have this virus. And again, I feel sorry for the parents who have to find alternative means of education or alternative ways of living with their kids, homeschooling their kids, whilst also going about their business, making enough money to support themselves and their family. Like, it's not an easy thing to do, and so many of us now work for a living that I think we've just created the perfect storm for this virus to really affect us in every single way. And, you know, while everybody's like, oh yes, I can't wait for things to go back to normal, there is so much work to do before that can possibly even begin to happen. Like, we've created a society where we want things now. So to me, the fact that this vaccine hasn't made a difference yet is making alarm bells ring in my head. And when I think about it, I'm like, that's because you're so used to an instant fix. You're so used to, you know, it's been a few weeks, why aren't the numbers going down? Because you're used to this culture of convenience where you can go out anytime and buy the food you need, and, you know, that was causing panic buying. So then every aspect of our lives has been affected. And yeah, mental health has been just crazy. Like, I'm surprised when I look back at March and where I was then, that I am where I am now, and taking each day as it comes is sometimes all you can really ask for. And I'm so grateful that I had a bit of a blip a couple of years ago, went through a service down here provided by the NHS, so it was free, that allows you to essentially work through cognitive behavioural therapy, gives you access to some of the fundamental things of therapies so that everybody has access to mental health tools. And I would absolutely encourage anybody here now who's affected by any of those things to please reach out to people, even if it is just reaching out to Headspace as an app and like doing it yourself. If you can motivate yourself to do that, really do. If you can't motivate yourself to do that, that is completely fine and understandable. But please do think about referring yourself either to your GP or to depression and anxiety services if you have one in your area, or like mental health clinics that will actually deal with what you're going through, because it's so important to be able to talk to someone, and so important to know that the way you're feeling isn't how you have to feel all the time. And you know, I'm thankful that for me, I experience it on a daily basis, but it is not debilitating most of the time. Like, don't get me wrong, at times it has been debilitating and at times it has been really, really hard, but I'm thankful that I at least can recognise the signs. And when I'm in a bit of a dip, those dips don't last forever. There are hundreds and thousands of people out there who are dependent on medications and who are dependent on all kinds of therapies and counselling, and are never in remission. This mental health is not something that you ever get over. Like, I'm not over my anxiety, not by a long shot. That will probably never happen, because I'm always in a constant state where, you know, I don't like anything out of the ordinary, I don't like anything out of routine, and I especially don't like this unsettling feeling that we don't know where we're going. But CBT has really helped me with that, and honestly I didn't think it would, and I'm so grateful that there were people behind me pushing me. So if you know someone who is having a really hard time, please do talk to them. Please do make it known that you care, and please do make it known that you're there for them, because that's really can be the difference between being here one day and not the next. Yeah. Whew. Let me know if these kind of videos are really helpful. They're really helpful for me just to talk about, so I'll carry on doing them, carry on raising awareness about mental health and that kind of thing. It's something that's really, really important to me. And before I go, I just want to talk about this. I just want to obviously make sure that I do put the links down below and in this video to places where you can get help and support right now if you need it. I will keep this conversation going here too, so if you do feel like you're in any trouble or you need help, please do comment. Don't feel like I'm a professional. I can't obviously help in that regard, but make it known that you're struggling so that someone can help you, because there is nothing to be ashamed of. And I think so many people now are grotesquely aware of why we need these things in our lives, and why mental health is so important, and why it is something that you need to carry on working at every day, because your mind is very much like your physical body, and if you let it go, it ends up in exactly the same state. It ends up deprived, it ends up with so many like bad, lazy habits that you really don't want to get into, because by the time you've gotten into them, you've probably gone through years like I have of psychologically conditioning myself to believe certain things, having really poor self-esteem, and that's a lot easier to get into the habit of when you don't have a problem than when you do. So yeah, look after yourselves, please, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching this really rambly video. I hope it's been as cathartic to watch as it has been to share. But thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye guys, see ya.